Hi, we are here again. This is Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Moirore. And this time around, we're going to be discussing about overcoming self-sabotage. We have a great guest with us who's known as David Falco, and he's going to tell us more. So why not join me as I go and meet David? Are you ready? Here we go. Let's meet him. Hello, David.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you, Anthony?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm well. How about you?
Doing fantastic. It's Friday.
Yeah, welcome to Now Tell Us.
Good to be here.
We are honored to have you here. Now, where are you?
I am in Oklahoma City, is where headquarters is, but we work with students worldwide. We got students coast to coast here in the United States, but we also have students in Italy. I've also had students in Korea too, as well. So HQ is in Oklahoma City, but we're worldwide now.
Wow, wonderful. Now, talking of working with students, what exactly do you do, if we may ask?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Seisha and we founded the Inner Anthem Academy, and it's a self development program. The majority of what we focus on, obviously, is fitness and nutrition, but those are
Mhm.
just the specific tools that we use to help people just overcome self sabotage, their poor behavioral lifestyles, things like that. And so, whether it's they're wanting to lose weight, whether it's they're wanting to get off medications, whether it's wanting them to kick an addiction, things like that, it's like we work with them through step by step processes in regards to setting up their week, setting goals, holding them accountable, having just the structure and the accountability for them to make the appropriate adjustments in their day to day life so that they're able to accomplish the goals that they're wanting to. So, yep.
That's beautiful. Where did your journey begin?
Well, I've been doing this professionally for 16 years. I started in 2000 and golly, started all the way back in 2006. I've been in
And I was curious about even before you got started into this. Where were you born? How was it growing up? How was your.
oh, okay. Yeah, for sure.
Now, then we'll come to what inspired you to get started on this journey later on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town called Sand Springs. It's just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Um, I've always been in sports ever since I was 6. So I had a great foundation essentially in regards to fitness. My father got me into sports very, very young, and never stopped all the way through junior high, high school,
Mhm.
collegiately. Uh, Nothing anything professionally like that, but the foundation was laid, and so that's how I just got started. In regards to how I came across this and was like, what do I do? I actually, we'll get to that here in a minute, but coming from Oklahoma, coming from a small city, I wouldn't even call it a city, it was actually a small town. I was raised very conservative. Things were very black and white. Um, and when I say black and white, I'm talking about it's like my dad was very right winged. Like even with my hats, he was like, "You can't wear your hats backwards. You always want to be nicely dressed." Like very, very, very conservative
Yeah.
way of living, and it's great. A lot of things as you're growing up, you don't really understand with your parents
Mhm.
as a child, as a teenager. But as you get older, as you start to have your kids yourself too, is where you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, now that makes a lot more sense." You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I get
And
you.
so a lot of the lessons that he instilled in me stick to this day. He always talked about, we finish what we start. Um, he always talked about keeping or having a lot of follow through.
Hmm.
It's like he was never one to it's like, well, it's like we don't stop. It's like if we're saying we're going to do this, we're going to follow through. We're going to finish it. If we don't, it's like even if you're not good at it. And so that's just one of the things, even now, even with my students, is like we want to create these pillars, we want to create these paradigms, we want to create these thoughts and beliefs. Is like if you're going to say that you're going to do X, Y, and Z, we expect you to follow through and do X, Y, and Z. Period.
And I just wish today's children are going to hear this message, because we have a challenge. We have a challenge. But this is why we are here, and this is why we are having this conversation. Uh, we need this message to reach out there. Is what we experience growing up is not what our children are experiencing. The lessons that we got uh, passed on to us from our parents, very few are getting this message. Someone may say it, but not everyone is getting it.
I think that so I have two kids of my own now too as well, and that's one of the struggles that even for me currently, they're both very young. One's 2 and one is 3 months, so they're brand new, they're babies, things like that. But as you see, as we're growing up now, like kids now, it's like I feel like they're just it is completely just they're soft, for a lack of a better word. They're just soft, and so I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just it's really hard. I don't know exactly when and where and why, but I look at kids, and that's even the thing for me. What Seisha and I talk about is there's 4 pillars for Zaman and Lenny. Is number 1 is we want to establish discipline.
Okay.
Number 2, respect. So discipline, respect, hard work ethic, and then belief in yourself. Those are the 4 things that we want to instill with them. And so whatever direction that they want to go with their life, whether it's athletics, whether it's not athletics, it doesn't really matter. But whatever they decide to do is that's what we want them to make sure that they're giving it their full effort, they're following through, and they're not doing anything halfway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's very good of you. And I wish you great success, because as I said, we need encouragement. We need someone to tell me it's gonna work. It's gonna work. Believe, okay, even though you're having a challenge, being listened to. Just keep on talking, and they will hear. And I wish they apply it in their life.
What do you think it is in regards to kids nowadays?
Now we've got a lot of influence from the media. Now, when we were growing up, those programs, those episodes we were watching, anything that we were being impacted with was positive. It was not so highly influenced in the negative aspect. Now, things are changing very fast and changing towards the negative. I don't know how this is going to, that's my thought. That's my opinion. And I don't know about you.
And it's 24/7 too, as well. That's some of the biggest things too, is that there's like mass media. It's like it's everywhere, multiple channels on your phone, on your laptop. It's like you can't escape it. It's like anytime you turn on a monitor, you're going to have some sort of news. You're going to have some sort of message come along, and it's like, and there's just so many. It's like, how do we filter it out? Right? We're just constantly just bombarded. And that's even one thing that would be interesting too, as well, as they start to grow up too, as I was like, as a parent, how do you filter that out? And this is going to tying this into, so like how somebody thinks is highly influenced by the messaging that they hear. And nowadays, kids aren't only messaged through their family and their parents, they're messaged through media constantly. And so if they've never experienced any hardship, if they've never experienced any adversity, if they've never experienced any struggle, how are they going to survive in the real world?
Yeah, talk about 24/7. And I can remind you that when you were growing up, our TV channel used to open at 5 p.m. That was the opening ceremony. And so, and then it is going to close at 12 midnight. And that was the only thing.
That was it?
That was it. That was
wow.
It. I was growing up. So now talk of 24/7. There's no control to what someone is going to be watching, because you're not always with them. They have it in their hand. It's not even on the television. They have it in their hand. So it's quite a challenge.
For sure. That's even the one thing I think, and when we talk about highly influenced, it's like we're not going to be able to be around our kids like 24/7 too as well. So it's, I believe that it's like who they're hanging out with. I believe it's just like there's the normal source, their social circle is going to be as influential. I think it was as influential as their own parents.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
it does. It does.
And then here's the deal.
Yeah.
If the people that they're hanging out with are running around doing the wrong things, getting involved in the wrong things, and when we talk about, even like I said, that whole self-sabotage, of course
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna leak in, and it's gonna have an influence and an impact into what they're doing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And you're talking about self-sabotage here. Now, I want to imagine, just as we are sharing some common things, that when you were growing up, you went through some challenges which you had to overcome. And now, looking at the aspect of the challenges you are to overcome were coming, it's something that was you faced before you. And then now we are coming to, it's not something that was coming from inside of you. And now we are talking of self-sabotage where, but I'm going to get this from your words, your own words, because you're the one who's gonna tell us self-sabotage and how to overcome it.
So there, I mean, obviously this is a super, super deep subject. I think
Mm,
where can we start? Let's talk about like, where can we start?
yeah.
I think the first thing would be is like just identifying, it's like, what exactly is the initial self-sabotage?
Hmm.
So whether it's somebody's vices, uh, drugs, alcohol, um, whatever it means. Obviously, those are just kind of like the mainstream ones that people think about.
Hmm.
But identifying what that self-sabotage is, because people may not even be aware of it. Thinking about, okay, who are you with? Where are you at? When is it happening? Times two as well. But also like the emotions. The biggest thing I think is where people screw up. When I say screw up, is like where they struggle with is their own thoughts and feelings about an event.
Hmm.
So whether it's their stress from work, whether it's their stress from anything, whether it's stressors, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, anytime that these negative, what people would call negative emotions happen and occur, it's
Hmm.
the individual's feelings that dictate how we respond in the future.
Okay.
So if we're able to actually identify, okay, why we're feeling the way that we are, acknowledge those feelings, it's like we'll be able to pump the brakes, so to speak, and then actually formalize a better way of approaching and solving the problem, because it all comes down to solving problems. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
yeah, it makes sense. We are looking at the idea that, as we have begun, is the influence that we get from those that are surrounding us. And then now the influence, what we internalize and what we process within us, then we bring it out. That's what is going to affect how far we're going to go, or how we are going to stop our own self from attaining what we have to attain. Now, and you remind me of this quote where someone says that the ship does not sink from the water that is around it, it sinks from the water that is inside.
Science. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to be careful what we internalize, what we let uh, get into us, and how it affects us. And
Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I said, yeah. Yeah, everything. The music that you listen to, the shows that you watch, obviously the people that you're hanging out with, right?
Mm,
All they get, and this is what we're talking about, like the mass media and the messaging and everything. It's like media is 24/7. You can't get away from a monitor. So again, it's like the type of messaging that you're hearing is like, is it positive? Is it not positive? Has a big influence. I don't know. I've actually never heard that quote before, but it's absolutely like we used to say, garbage in, garbage out.
out exactly.
Right, it's an old classic one, but it's so cliche, but it is so true. And I can
Hmm.
even reference like in my younger days, um, simply just from the type of music that I listened to had an effect of the way that I thought about things. And this is what we're talking about. Our thoughts about our specific emotions that we're experiencing can lead and dictate our actions. And I can absolutely say is like, from the type of messaging that I was receiving, from the type of music that I had been listening to, had an effect.
Hmm.
And most of the time at that point in my life, it was not in a positive manner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm curious to know what are some of those negative manners Place. Where did you find yourself?
All right. Well, it says like so even so let's go back. Let's just rewind, right? So
Yeah.
my parents separated and got divorced when I was very young. I was in second or third grade. So I was like
Okay.
7 or 8,
Mm,
right? And so at that age, there is a lot of confusion,
mm-hmm.
right? I was experiencing some resentment at the time. And then I've always been a little rebellious, anyways. So just to have that particular event happen kind of like increased my rebelliousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is very particular and is as went into my teenager years and even into my young 20s, I found myself more angry, more frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
more. I think that, like I said, I think the biggest word was just to be resentful. And
Okay.
so the type the type of music that I was listening to fueled that.
Mm,
Um, whether it was angry rock or heavy metal, whether it was rap, whether it was like even in like country music. Country music is always about like heartbreak and drinking,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm,
And so it's like that type of messaging amplified a lot of my negative emotions that I was experiencing from my childhood.
mm-hmm.
Um, and even now, it's like majority is it's like when you're fueling those emotions with, it's almost like those people are whispering in your ear.
Yeah.
Um, it can again lead you down a path that you're not going to be proud of.
Mm,
Um, and so what I would say is even earlier in regards to raising kids, I don't know if this is going in the direction that you want to about raising kids, but when we talk about kids being soft, when we talk about kids being influential, it absolutely matters to how the parents monitor them,
mm,
and specifically with their technology.
mm-hmm.
But if they're always listening, if they're always, so it's like if the music is always talking about, can we cuss on this show?
No.
Oh no, okay, no, okay. I just wanted to make sure. But anyways, so if there's like explicit lyrics,
Yeah.
if there's explicit lyrics about women
Mm-hmm.
and derogatory towards women, that's going to have an influence on them,
Yeah.
right? If there is if there's specific language about violence, if there's specific language about sex, if there's specific language whatever, it's just like it's going to have an influence. And I
Mm,
don't, it's kind of crazy. It's like as I'm actually saying this out loud, I'm like, oh my gosh, have I turned into that old grandfather type of like, oh, this back in the day is like, and it is really crazy for me to actually like say this stuff out loud. But
mm,
I absolutely believe it can have an impact to some degree. Now, I'm going to say it's going to have all the impact, but it can
yeah.
have an influence to some degree in people's emotions, how they respond to specific situations, because art imitates life.
Yeah. There's hope. There's hope. Just
Well,
believe.
I mean, absolutely, because you could use it in the pot. It's the same thing, though. We could flip it. If there's types of messaging that's leading you down a negative path, there are also types of messaging that can lead you through a positive manner too, as well. And it's like
Sure.
being able to decipher which one's going to be the best. It's like even like now, it's like the particular shows that I used to watch, particular music that I listen to, that's evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, how can we overcome that? I would actually say start there. The messaging, the media, the songs, the news, the profiles and stuff like that on your social media, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. It's like everything matters. Everything that we do matters. And then
Yeah,
taking it levels deeper into who it is that you're hanging out with too as
exactly.
well.
Exactly.
Birds of a
Your
feather.
your students. Um, when you say students, my mind goes very far. And what's the range? Who are these students that you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. The youngest that I ever worked with was 12. My youngest student was 12 years old. My oldest student that I've ever had was 75. Uh, the majority of them, like I said, with the Inner Anthem Academy, these like when people from just from a glance, people think that it's just simply like fitness and nutrition, right?
Yeah.
So when they see our programs, when they see our students, and they see all the testimonials, and they see people who's 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, upward to over 100. I have 10 100-pound losers on our portfolio. So obviously at a glance, people think it's simply, a fitness program, which is not. It's actually a self-development program.
Yeah.
Fitness and nutrition are just two of the main tools that we focus on, because if you don't have your health in order, more than likely there's these other areas of your life that aren't going to be in order as well. And so these are the two simplest things is that we can start with today, now, rather than trying to overcome some of these other things of self-sabotage. So it's we've worked with, my oldest was 75, my youngest was 12. The majority of them struggle with their weight. The majority of them self-sabotage. The majority of them have poor time management. They have poor emotional control. They have what I refer to as a pendulum swing mindset. So it's kind of like all or nothing. So it's like, well, if I can't do it right, if I can't do it perfect, I'm just not going to do anything. Or, well, if I do it and I can't figure it out and I keep screwing up, I don't want to screw up. So I'm not even going to try until I can make sure that I can follow through and do absolutely everything pristine, everything right. And both of those are just, they're not going to work. Ever.
Talking about perfectionists.
Yes.
I have a horde of people who are not doing anything, or they have an idea, they have dreams, but they're not doing it because they are gonna screw up. What's your word? What's your word to them?
Screw up. So this is really cool. No, now we're going to get down to the nitty gritty.
Okay, let's get down.
So number one, so even in our program, one of the first things that I do is I actually give them a personality test. And based off of, so we all fall into specific quadrants. There's like 4 different quadrants. And typically people are a combination of 2, sometimes 3, very rarely 1. So there's these combinations of personalities. Once we get this back, we can show them, okay, this is why you've been behaving the way that you have, because it's based off of the way that you've thought about X, Y, and Z, because of your specific personality type. So this is very interesting, Anthony. We're about 50-50 men and women. The women in the program, 90% of them have perfectionistic tendencies. They try to go through life error-free.
Okay.
And so they don't like screwing up. Yeah. They don't like looking bad. They don't like not succeeding. And so when it comes to this particular area of health, fitness, and nutrition, they probably have a track record of not following through. They have a track record of self-sabotage, starting, stopping. They have a track record of not being able to, like I said, have emotional control. And so what do they tell themselves? Well, why bother? I'm just going to screw up anyways. That's a belief. Yeah. And it's like, we need to address that. And then we need to unwind. It's like, okay, why do you believe that? Well, it's based off of, my past history. Okay, let's go into that. So let's talk about this past history. Why did you start and stop? What happened? Walk us through that. And so basically through this whole process is simply just, number one, figuring out their personality type, is we can begin to reverse engineer how they got to where their current state is, being overweight, unhappy, depressed, anxiety, all this stuff. It's like, it's really, really interesting. But 90% of the females that are in the program have perfectionistic tendencies. They're afraid of messing up. What would I tell them? Mess up, but learn. That's the key point. We are all going to make mistakes. I got this from, you ever heard of Daniel Negreanu? He's a poker player.
No, I don't think I've heard him.
No worries. But he said, this is a quote from him. This is great. He says, we're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Period. He said, not learning from the mistake is the mistake.
Yeah.
So it's like, even for yourself, it's like, you've screwed up this week. you've made errors, you've messed up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you
Yeah.
learn anything? Did you
Yeah.
learn anything?
I try as much as possible too.
And so that's the point of us is like, oh gosh, what if I mess up? Mess up. Mess up.
Yeah.
Learn and then readjust
Mm-hmm.
and then proceed. Mess up, learn, readjust, move forward. Mess up again, learn, readjust, move forward. That's how we're going to overcome any problem solving. That's how you're going to troubleshoot anything. Your self sabotage. David, I always self sabotage. Okay. Tell me about it. Well, every time this happens, I do this. Okay. Why is that? I don't know. Well, if you did know, and I'd really like to start probing and asking the question over, over until they come to it's like, well, maybe it's, and they'll come up with a reason. Okay, now let's dive into that, and let's dive into that, and let's dive into that. And so we'll get to a point where we'll be like, there. Do you see that? We'll be like, I never thought about it that way. And now we
Mm-hmm.
start to go back forward. Can you see how that influenced this, how this influenced this? And then now you think like this, and this is why you behaved. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
And you can apply it to everything. It's not just health, fitness, and nutrition. You could do this to why you procrastinate at your job. You could
Mm-hmm.
do this as like, why do you lose your temper with your children so easily?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, why are you so impatient with your spouse? He's like, what are they? Because everything that we teach is universal. Like I said, it's just a more emotional control,
Yeah.
more self-awareness. That's such a trendy word and phrase now, like self-awareness, but it is true. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
understanding why you're thinking the way that you think. And then it's like, what is it that what and how would you like to improve? Well, I'd like to do, okay, so let's start. But what if I mess up? Well, guess what, sweetheart? You're going to mess up. It's going to
Yes.
happen. You're going to
Yeah.
mess up. So
Yeah.
we just want to learn, adjust, and move forward again. That
Mm-hmm.
would be my biggest thing is like, stop worrying about messing because you're going to.
Mm-hmm.
And people spend too much energy, think it's an end all be all. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
It's just mess up,
Wow.
man.
Wow. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking your time and coming and sharing with us all that you have shared with us. And at this point, I'm thinking there could be someone out there who's interested in connecting with you to continue learning more or even sign up to your program. Tell us how to go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way and the fastest way to get a hold of Seisha or myself is through our Instagram. Mine is freefalco_fitness. It's
Mm-hmm.
FREEFALCO_fitness. That's the platform that I'm on the most, and that would be the fastest way. So you could just shoot me a DM there, and then I can direct you on where to go. Our program isn't for everybody. I understand that. That's totally fine. But
Yeah.
if you're the type of person that is continually falling into these patterns of self-sabotage, number one is like, if you really truly want to do something about it, you need to surround yourself with people who have done it. And that's even the biggest thing is not getting support from myself and the staff, but getting support from your peers, women and men who have been in your shoes, but they've also overcome it and had tremendous success. You need to be exposed to those people more.
Okay. Thank you. And that link is actually attached on the description to the video. So if you're listening or watching, you can always click on that link and connect with David and overcome your self-sabotage.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, so we've come to the end of the show, but before we go, we would like you to leave us with a few words that we should always remember. Which are they?
I would say, I like how we ended it out just with the last topic is if you're going to go through life just worrying about messing up, you're just going to continue to be frustrated. I would actually look for the opportunities and the lessons learned from your mistakes. That'd be the biggest thing. It's just like if your parents never taught you that, if your teachers never taught you that, like let me teach you that. It's like you're going to screw up, but these are the opportunities, and that's where the growth is. You need to get uncomfortable. So move forward. Have the courage to move forward. Take that risk. Don't shy away from it. And if you mess up, at least make sure that you learn something from that.
Thank you very much. They've had it, and thank you for telling us.
Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's about it. And I've been your host, Anthony Moirore, and together with our guest today, David Falco, we are saying, go out there and become the best version of yourself. And that's it. Bye for now.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, same.